Welcome to our, oh, very good. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending today's training on accessibility considerations for remote teaching with Deborah Goins. Along with all the other training sessions this week, this one is being recorded and you'll have the option of viewing it again later. Due to the large number of participants, which may be in this session, the moderator, me, or Deborah actually, will have you muted. Your microphone will be muted. If you have a question, please use the chat feature located at the bottom of the screen and send your questions there, and then we'll compile them at the end and the presenter will answer those at the end of the session. I want to start today's session by sharing some information that we've included all the training sessions. If you're brand new to remote or online teaching, we recommend that you visit and explore the resources on the K-State Keep Teaching website at ksu.edu/keepteaching. The Preparing and Planning page under the Remote Teaching and Learning Resources tab has a checklist of steps to get you started. The home page of the website also includes getting started checklists for students and faculty, and I'm going to put those in the chat box right now. Let's see here. Let's see, I'm going to have that in there. Okay. Oh, I have to get back to my script. All right. Sorry about that. I'm posting things. Sorry about that. My script got messed up here. Okay. As we rapidly transition our classes using various remote teaching options, we want to encourage you to keep things as simple as possible. This session is going to focus on practical steps you can implement right away. If you have additional questions after today's session, please send them to gcid@k-state.edu. This email address is being monitored by our Global Campus Instructional Design team, and all inquiries will be responded to as quickly as possible. You can also contact the IT Help Desk by phone at 785-532-7722 or via email at helpdesk@ksu.edu, and I'm going to share this information again. Like I said, it's on the chat box now. Please also check out the K-State Keep Teaching training sessions page to see if there are other sessions you can access for helpful information as you transition to remote teaching, and that's also in the chat box. And again, due to the large number of participants, we would like to have you mute your microphone. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will address them at the end of the session. So Deborah, go ahead.
Thank you, Julie. Again, my name is Deborah Goins, and I'm the instructional designer within the College of Arts and Sciences. For the last 2 years, I've been working diligently with KSU Global Campus, the Teaching and Learning Center, and the Student Access Center to help promote an inclusive educational culture, which means that we are actually trying to build our skills when we're developing our course materials with accessibility in mind. This lesson that we are going to cover today is on things that we want to consider when we are developing remote courses for accessibility. But as Julie mentioned, we know that things are moving very quickly and your time is limited on your development. So please understand that this is designed as a resource for you, something to help you as you're developing your material. So we're going to cover some just of the basic ideas. We're not going to expect perfection out of anyone, but as you're designing your course content and adding new content, we want this to be some things that will help you with your design ideas. So thanks for attending this session on accessibility. There is a lot of information that we are going to cover, but it's all designed to help you to prepare your content, so to get you off to a really good start next week. You're going to notice that what I have done is I have set this training up within Canvas as a course within Canvas. And I've taken my slides that I would have had as PowerPoint slides and made them as information pages within Canvas. I did this purposefully to give you your first idea that you might want to consider. Most of you already have slides that you've been using in your face-to-face courses, and those slides may not contain a lot of textual information. So this is a design idea that you might want to be able to implement, which is to simply take your PowerPoint slides and export them out as images, and then take those images and add them to Canvas pages, and then add text underneath. That way, someone with a screen reader or an assisted device would have access to the information in a textual format, instead of having you be there face to face with them in a lecture. So let's get started. Um, when we talk about accessibility, the first thing we want to consider is that we have a policy that was put into place at K-State. It's found in our Policies and Procedures Manual, Policy and Procedure Manual item number 3025. It states that federal law requires that our university provides equal educational opportunities for all of our students. This includes students with disabilities. The course accessibility standards policy provides guidance for us so that we can ensure that all of our course delivery methods that are utilizing technology, which we might refer to as e-learning, or we've been talking about it as remote teaching now, but all of the technology that we use, including the materials that we place in our courses, need to be accessible to students that have a disability. I want to share that policy with you in case you haven't actually seen it on our K-State web pages, so that you know where it is located in our policy and procedure manual. You'll note that this policy was put into place in 2013. So over 6 years ago, we considered the need to be compliant with federal mandates. The policy in itself applies to all faculty and staff who may be developing courses or using our learning management system at K-State, or if they're affiliated with the university. It states that all course delivery mechanisms and course content must be made accessible. This policy does refer to any new courses that we may be building, but it also refers to any new materials that we may be adding to our existing courses and retrofitting of existing courses. So this is totally applicable for us at this point, because we may have our course material already in existence and now adding them to Canvas, our learning management system. So we need to think about the accessibility of the materials that we're going to be putting into Canvas. It also applies to any software that we may be utilizing. Perhaps we are going to be using video software. So we need to think about the accessibility of the software that we're using. And we want to make our courses accessible. And that means we might need to consider the format of our Word documents that we are providing for our students. We may be needing to provide a written transcript for an audio file that we have added to our course materials for our students. And we may need to consider adding a text version of the audio so that a student with a disability that is not able to see the text has audio, or a student that is not able to hear the audio has text that they can read. So providing them alternative means to access the same information. Most likely, though, we have our PowerPoint slides that we're using. And as I was demonstrating earlier, the PowerPoint slide can still be used, and we just need to add textual content to go with that PowerPoint slide. By making courses accessible to students that may be sight or hearing impaired, we're actually making that same course accessible and more accessible to students with a wide range of disabilities and abilities, because we're providing them with multiple ways to access the content. Let's think about, what do we really mean when we're talking about accessibility? What is the definition of accessibility? It is a general term, and it describes the degree to which we're making something available to as many people as possible. So we want to think about the ability for someone to access the information or be able to use the functionality of a system or an entity. The Office of Civil Rights and the Department of Education define a course as being accessible when all of our students are able to have equal access to the materials and the information. so they have the opportunity to acquire that same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy the same services. This is a hot topic for us here at K-State, especially now that we're teaching remotely, but we need to become more aware of the need to make our courses accessible. In Canvas, our learning system that we're using to manage our courses, educational materials are accessible when they're formatted in such a way that as many students as possible have access to our digital content. Providing accessible content for our online environment requires an understanding of the best practices for designing our content. So that is really what we're talking about today. We need to think about what are the different types of accessibility issues that we might run across based on the types of disabilities that our students might have. There are 4 major categories of disabilities that I wanted to point out today. The most common disabilities that we think about are visual disabilities and hearing disabilities or auditory disabilities. But we also may have students with some sort of motor disability, or actually the most common type of disability that our students may have, whether they report it or not, are cognitive disabilities. Now we look at visual disabilities mostly as those that we know that are completely blind, but it could include students that have low vision, or more than likely, it could be a color blindness. So we need to take that into consideration when we're developing our course material. For a student that has an auditory disability, their hearing may be limited or they may be completely non-hearing. Students that have motor disabilities may have some functionality of their limbs, but that functionality may be limited with their fine motor skills. It may take them longer to be able to respond with their limbs. They may not be able to use a mouse at all. So we need to take that into consideration, especially when we're providing them with testing time and deciding on the testing length time. We may have students that need more time now that they're taking their courses online than they would have if they were taking a face-to-face course. Again, cognitive disabilities, although they may not have been reported at a high number to reflect those that actually have learning disabilities, we might find now that we are teaching online, a higher number of students are going to need to have some sort of consideration for a learning disability, or maybe they have a harder time remembering or focusing on large amounts of information, or they might be easily distracted. So those are things that we want to take into consideration within our course design. I've mentioned already that we have a policy at K-State that states that we need to abide by a law. Federal law does require that we not discriminate with students that may have a disability, but providing accessible content to students in an accessible manner is not just something that we do because it's required by law. In reality, it's going to benefit a wide range of our students and provide a more equitable educational process for our students. But providing our students with an accessible design actually works even better for all of our students. It increases the level of learning for all of our students. And universal design has been found to improve student learning. So accessible PDFs that we create are going to be searchable. Accessible videos are going to help our English as second language students with their verbal skills. And when we create our Word documents with accessibility in mind, they actually become more manageable, not just for our students, but also for us as the designers of the content. So keep this in mind. We want to add accessibility from the start as we're creating new materials, because it's far easier to build our content with a accessibility design rather than to have to go back and fix content and retrofit. It takes more time to meet accommodation needs if we have to fix content that was not built with accessibility in mind. And that may put our students at a disadvantage and cause them to have a shorter time frame to have the materials available and to learn. So we don't want our students to fall behind because of our design not being as accessible as possible. We do have regulations that I want to point out. Although I'm not going to take the time today to go through the regulations, I just want to point these out to you. There's 3 categories to consider. First of all, there is the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Within that, we have 2 sections, Section 504 and Section 508, which actually apply to us at K-State because we are federally funded as an institution. Therefore, we are obligated to not discriminate or to bar our students from the learning environment because of the way that we provided our technology or our information. In addition to the Rehabilitation Act, there is the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, which most people are familiar with to some extent. Within the ADA requirements, there are 2 sections, one being Title II and the other being Title III, that apply to us at K-State. And we also have within the state of Kansas guidelines that are specifically mandating how we make materials available on the internet. And our Canvas learning management system utilizes web design. So these actually do apply to us. The good news is that Canvas in itself is designed with accessibility in mind. With just a little bit of understanding of how to create information in Canvas, we can maintain compliance with these accessibility standards. For your reference, I just wanted to point out that all of this information is available on the internet. One of the websites that I like to use is WebAIM, Web Accessibility in Mind. This is a great resource for us to go to when we're not quite sure of how to do things in the most accessible manner. We can use this as a great reference for more information. So I wanted to point out WebAIM, and most of the references I have within this training session are going to redirect you to articles at that website. So many of us have courses at K-State that are going to be using technology now that we're teaching remotely. And we want to make sure that we are aware of these accessibility standards. Now, when I refer to accessibility, that is just a general term to think about how we design things. But when we refer to accommodations, that is a more specific process that requires for us to take into consideration changes that may need to be made specifically for a student with a accessibility need, or they may have a disability that's not met by good accessibility design. So we're referring to an accommodation as something that we do to address a specific need, whereas accessibility is a general design idea. For faculty, we do have some responsibilities with accommodations. Again, ideally, we want to do things in the most accessible means possible. That's going to cover most of the accommodation requests that we would have gotten anyway, and that would save us a lot of time and effort. If we use the idea of universal design, like I had mentioned earlier, we're going to have multiple ways for a person to have access to information. So just as I'm taking PowerPoint slides and I'm making text available underneath that PowerPoint slide, a person may be able to get the meaning from it from the slide, but if they can't see that slide, they're going to get the meaning by having the text available that they can use with their assistive device. So accommodations are made for students so we can avoid any barriers, and it helps us to make our information available specifically for students with needs. There is a process that we have in place at K-State for our students, and it is something that the students will be initiating. So they're going to go to the Student Access Center, contact the Student Access Center through email now or call them. And they will contact the Student Access Center and receive an accommodation letter. They'll use that accommodation letter as a notification to the instructor and email that to instructors. Then they're also encouraged on top of that to meet with their instructor one-on-one. So they are going to email or maybe have a phone call or a video chat with the instructor to talk about how that accessibility accommodation need is going to be met specifically for them. We do have the Student Access Center available to the faculty members also. So if they're not sure on how do they meet that accommodation request, or they don't have the tools available to meet that accommodation request, the Student Access Center is available as a resource to faculty to help them. It might mean making sure that text information for a textbook is available in an accessible format. So please do feel free to contact the Student Access Center if you run across a situation where you need help. There are resources available with the Student Access Center. One of them is their accommodations page. So I want to share with you the accommodation page that's available at the Student Access Center. Another resource that we have is the ability to email the Student Access Center also, or to give them a call. If you are on the Manhattan campus, the email address is going to be accesscenter@ksu.edu. But for those in Salina at the Polytech campus, contact Sarah Werner directly or give her an email at her email address or give her a phone call. A lot of us are wondering, what does it really mean to be accessible, and really what other resources are available to you? I wanted to make sure that you understand that the university recognizes that the successful implementation of accessibility standards does require a well-planned design, and we wanted you to know that we are working diligently to provide more resources, because we know that you need those committed resources, which may include increased funding, training, and support services. So we are currently designing more accessibility resources for us as a university. But you just need to be aware of the accessibility concerns for our instructional methods that we are using. So as we're teaching remotely, we need to think about how the design of our course is. And it's important for us to consider that accessibility and the materials that we're using for this remote environment. And so you'll notice that in this presentation, we're providing guidance, not step-by-step instructions, but just design ideas as far as keeping accessibility in mind. Since we do use Microsoft products on campus, I wanted you to think about, as you're designing course content with Microsoft Word or using PowerPoint in your PowerPoint presentations, we want to think about how the document is being created or how the PowerPoint slide is being created. In a nutshell, when we're dealing with our Microsoft Office products, remember that Microsoft includes an accessibility checker within its products. So for our Word document, I'm going to encourage you to use plain text as you're creating your Word document, and then to go back and use the built-in tools that Microsoft has available in order to make your headings and your list structures. And as you're creating your visual elements and adding your images, you want to try to not go in and format them using things such as bold and italics. You want to use design styles and heading styles. In a nutshell, you're going to avoid directly formatting that text, and you're going to use the styles tools that are available in Microsoft. This also applies to our PowerPoint presentations. So as you're creating your PowerPoint slides, you want to use as much plain text as possible. But then also a trick that you may want to think about is that instead of just only having your information available in that PowerPoint slide presentation as a PowerPoint slide, you can also save it, as I have done here, in a format so that you can add text underneath that slide in the Canvas pages. So you're providing it with an alternative format. There are many ideas as far as how to create your headings and the step-by-step processes. So I wanted to refer you to a resource that we do have available, and that resource is going to be within our Canvas information pages. So if you go to canvas.ksu.edu and then add a slash and then info, at our Canvas information webpage, we have a section for digital accessibility. And within the digital accessibility, we have a checklist available. This checklist is designed for you as you're just creating your content. If you're using Microsoft Office products, we have a list of things to take into consideration. So when we're talking about using your headings, or if you're creating bulleted list, we have just some tips for you, some best practices. Or if you're creating Canvas web pages, we have best practices. We also go further into details as to what you're going to do step-by-step processes. So if you are using Microsoft Word and you are needing to know how to create headings within that Word document, we provide you with links to video instructions, step-by-step instructions for you so that you can create those headings with accessibility in mind. Since we won't have time to actually go through those today, I wanted also to point you to a Microsoft resource, which has the group of videos available in one place. So if you go to support.microsoft.com, you'll see that accessibility video training has been provided for us. For instance, if we're looking at Word documents, there's 7 short videos available that take us through step-by-step processes, and it makes our life so much easier if they can show us how to do it. Instead of me walking you through the process today, I wanted to refer you to this web page with the videos already available. A lot of us are going to be using Adobe PDF documents in our web pages as we upload them to Canvas in the learning management system. However, you do need to be aware that the accessibility of a PDF is really directly related to the accessibility of the original document. That means if you had a Word document and you made a PDF file out of it, but the Word document did not have the heading structure set up so that a screen reader was able to recognize the sections of that document, then once it's created as a PDF, it's going to have the same issues. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware that we need to consider the accessibility of those PDF documents and to consider whether or not you need to go back to that Word document and double check its accessibility. You can check the accessibility of a PDF document by trying to highlight the text to see if the text is searchable. Sometimes we may have a document that was scanned from maybe a book or an article that we're referencing for our students, and the scanned document may actually have been formatted as an image instead of text available. We need to make sure that our PDF documents are scanned with optical character recognition format. We call that OCR. And again, the way that we can confirm it is if we're able to find text by selecting text, and if we can copy it and if we can paste it, or if you can do a word search within that PDF document, that would confirm if that document was scanned with text recognition. There are a few other tips that we can use when we're thinking about our PDF documents, such as, was that PDF document scanned and did it have highlighting and underlining or writing on the page? If so, is that going to be available to our students to be read out loud? Most likely not, and we'll need to provide some sort of alternative text for our students. So if we wrote on a piece of paper and we scanned it, the optical character recognition is not going to recognize the handwriting, and we'll need to make sure that what was written is also available in a text format for our students. Again, there is a wonderful article available in the WebAIM website that helps us to consider how we can create the most accessible PDF documents. So refer back to WebAIM for step-by-step processes and some good tips and tricks. One of the things that is going to be the most difficult for us is as we consider the way to provide our remote learning to our students. Some of us are thinking about providing videos since we won't have face-to-face lectures. So before you start creating videos or making video lectures, there are things to consider. Is there already a video out there that we might be able to use? Maybe you have access to videos that you've obtained, that you've purchased already, that you can make available to your students. If you do, check and see if they've been created with closed captioning already, or perhaps they have subtitles available for those that are English as second language learners. And if we're going to purchase new videos or access new videos, check and see if the closed captioning has already been provided within those new purchased or accessed videos for our students. If you do decide, though, that you're going to need to create your own videos, your self-recorded videos, consider how you're going to make those videos most accessible. Are you going to be able to have closed captionings for those videos? If so, what's the best way for you to do it? Perhaps you can start out by having your own transcript available and then using that transcript to create your own closed captioning for the video. You may have access to a student that is able to work for you remotely and help you with the captioning of your videos. Or it may be that you decide, because of the time constraint, that you want to send your videos off to a third-party provider and have them captioned as a paid service. We do have contracts currently, and we are working to update the terms of the contracts as we're going through this crisis period. So Caption Sync is one that we can recommend because it really works well with MediaSite. So if you're going to have your videos uploaded to MediaSite and you need them captioned, Caption Sync is one that is going to be easy to get a transcript or closed captioning made available. As we're doing the videos, though, and we're considering how are we going to get these captioned, consider the fact that our funds are limited. So prioritize the videos that you are going to make available to your students. Think about whether they need to be short introductory videos instead of full-length lectures. Can you refer them to the video as a way to get just the most important information, a summary or an introduction? And are you going to only use this video one time? Is it something that's just very specific, or is it something that you can use over and over again? Then prioritize the captioning of those videos based on those decisions that you're making. You may decide that instead of recording a video, that you're just going to provide some audio clips for your students to listen to. And again, make your information available in more than one format. So if your student can't hear that audio, we need to think about, do we have a text version of that audio, which would be called a transcript, to help your student to have access to the same information. When it does come to closed captionings, again, record only what's important for your students and be aware of the cost that is involved in captioning. We do have a lot of videos that are out there, and so we want to be very discreet in the amount of videos that we're going to be using in this time when we're transferring to our remote learning. We do understand that you may never have conducted a remote class before, and that you're taking what you had before as a face-to-face class and trying to get it translated over to a remote environment, and you don't have experience with that. So you're going to be using new tools. Maybe Canvas is something that you're not as familiar with, or you might be using Zoom remotely for the first time, or MediaSite is something that you need to know more about. We do have some drop-in sessions available tomorrow. So if you still have questions that you want to ask, some specific questions, please join the drop-in sessions. There'll be one on MediaSite tomorrow at 9 o'clock. So keep that in mind. If you're not able to make in any of those drop-in sessions, we are going to be recording them so that you can go back and get this information on demand. If you decide that you want to make some short videos that are available for your students, there is a tool available right within Canvas that is really nice for things like announcements or very short videos, because you wouldn't be able to go back and edit these recordings. But if you use Canvas's recorder, you can use either audio or video recorders. It does have a built-in tool that is available called Amara, which will help with the captioning. I will state that it's not an auto captioning tool. It's a tool that lets you go in and type in the transcript or the captioning, but it does help us to get this done very quickly. So I wanted to make sure that you knew about that. So these are best practices that we're talking about. We're not asking for perfection, but the more you're aware of the practices that help with accessibility, the easier it's going to be for you as you continue on with remote learning for the rest of this semester. We do have other resources available to you. One of the ones that I wanted to make sure that you're aware of is the guide that we have available at our MediaSite webpage. So when you're thinking about captioning, please refer to our MediaSite webpage. It goes into further detail about your options that are available, and if you choose the option, what is the step-by-step process. One of the ones that you may want to consider is a low-cost auto transcription that is called IBM Watson. The advantage of IBM Watson is it is integrated directly into MediaSite, and it is a faster way to get captioning for your video, even than YouTube. So if you've used YouTube and you've used their auto captioning feature that's available, it's pretty good, but you have to go back in and do a lot of editing, and then you have to afterwards go to MediaSite and upload it afterwards. Whereas with IBM Watson, it's low cost at 2 cents a minute. It helps take out some of that process for you and make it a little bit faster for you to go through. Canvas is a learning management system, but Canvas also is a nice way to think of creating your own little mini web page version of your course. Canvas has tools that are available for us to help us with accessibility. One of the tools is the page accessibility checker. So as you're creating content in Canvas and you're using the rich content editor, whether that be the page content editor or if you are using the Canvas quizzes, or Canvas has its assignments, all of those tools have a page section within it, and you can use the accessibility checker that is in that page just to double check and see if you need to make any adjustments to the content. Canvas also allows third-party applications to be tied in. And there is one that's called You Do It. And that was something that was developed by the University of Central Florida that we've added to our Canvas learning management system. Whereas the accessibility checker is available to check one page at a time, the You Do It tool checks the whole course. Keep in mind that both of these checkers are not foolproof certifications that everything is accessible. They are ways for us to have flags to find out if there's something that we need to double check or tweak. But they are wonderful resources available to us. Other resources, again, the WebAIM website, and then there are some other websites that are available to us to help us refer to as we're building our content. The Web Accessibility Initiative is a great resource as we're designing content and adding it into our Canvas pages, especially if you are not proficient in web design. This gives us some quick snippet code that we can use and copy and paste into Canvas. So that would help you instead of having to learn how to do web design. If you needed some little quick tip, it's a nice little reference for us to use. So just briefly on some best practices with Canvas. These are the same types of things that we would consider if we were designing a Word document. We want our heading structure to be set up in Canvas so that a screen reader or an assisted device could skip through content. So we want to set up our headings such as our main level heading of information page so that it can skip and read the heading, skip the content, go to the next heading, skip that content. That's really wonderful for our persons that are using screen readers or assistive devices. And then we want to think about how we're creating our list, like a bulleted list or a numbered list. Something that some of us need to think about is whether it needs to just be an item list with bullets or if it really is something that's a sequence with numbered lists. That makes a difference with our screen readers, and it helps our students that are using those to understand what it is that we're trying to tell them about. If we're creating hyperlinks in our Canvas pages, we want to use descriptive hyperlinks, which means that we're telling the person where they're being directed. So you'll notice that as I was creating hyperlinks in this content, you did not see a link that just says click here. It would tell you where the link is directing you to. Table design is something also that you'll be considering as you're adding content to Canvas. You want to have your table set up so that the top row is a heading, and that way a student would know what the content is that they need to understand for the table that's set up. We want to also think about color content. Sometimes we want to use something that's red so that a student pays attention to the content. But if that student has a color blindness that doesn't help them to understand red, then they would be at a disadvantage. So think about whether or not we are using color just as the sole means to represent something such as importance. If we're going to add any images to our web pages, we need to provide alternative text so that the screen reader can describe what that image is. So every image that we put out in our content needs to have alternative text, and that's just an accessibility standard that we need to take into consideration. So keep in mind, the university does require that we think about accessibility. We do know that we're not looking for perfection at this time because it's a lot to do. Remember, we do have resources available to you, not just the web resources, but also myself and other instructional designers are resources to you to help you along the way. So you're not on your own. We are here to help, and we don't want this to be something that's going to overburden you. So please reach out to us. Let us help you along the way, and then we will get through this together. So the thing that we want to keep in mind is that this is a purpose that we have. We want to make K-State a university that has been known to be forward thinking and out on the forefront. We're trying to be a top 50 university by the year 2025. And now we have this extra challenge of teaching remotely. But the goal is that we want all of our students to be afforded the same access. We want them to have equal opportunity to acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy some of the same services, whether they may have a disability or not. So we want to keep accessibility in mind. And with that, I'm going to open this up to questions.
I don't have any questions in the chat box at this time. Are there a few websites that maybe you could, oh, here, I do have one here. What suggestions do you have for ensuring accessibility in third-party software applications such as SolidWorks or other design software?
Right. So we do need to check with the provider of the software. Our instructional designers have been checking, and also Office of Mediated Education will check with the licensing agreement. That's one of the things that we need to check with if we're going to license with the third-party vendor. And it's another reason why we want to go through the Office of Mediated Education, so that someone has checked with them to make sure, because it is required by law. So most of our vendors are trying to become more compliant, and those that are not able to provide their information in a most compliant way, we need to think of secondary ways of doing it. So if we're going to, for instance, use that, we need to also maybe provide text information in addition to using that graphical information. Does that make sense?
Oh, thank you. I have a thank you down here.
Okay.
I have a question. You know, you mentioned a lot of different websites. You don't have a list of those websites we could put in the chat, do you? Like a list
Actually, what I'd like for everyone to do is to make a note of our Canvas information page.
Okay. And
And
so, yeah.
so if you go to
Okay. I will
canvas.k-state.edu, yes.
Okay. .state.edu. I'm going to be putting that in the chat. /info/accessibility.
Yeah, and if you just stick with /info, and then the person can get there and just click on accessibility.
Oh, is that right? Okay, very good. I'll just
That's just
put
the
that
easiest
in the
way.
I'll put that in the chat box so everyone has it. Okay.
Right, and so the same links that I was referring to earlier today, they're going to be available within these web pages.
Very good. Okay.
And more, actually, we have even videos embedded here.
Okay.
So that's where I want everyone to that's your quick spot to go to.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay. Well, then I will do my closing little thing here. Thank you for attending today's training session, and I hope you found it helpful. Please remember, if you have additional questions after today's session, you can send them to gcid@k-state.edu, and this email is being monitored by the Global Campus Instructional Design Team, and all inquiries will be responded to as quickly as possible. And you can also connect to the IT Help Desk by phone at 785-532-7722 or via email at helpdesk@ksu.edu. And then I also have that information listed in the chat box. Please also check out the K-State Keep Teaching training sessions page to see if there are other sessions that can provide helpful information as you transition to remote teaching. And that again is in the chat box. And the next couple of days, we're going to be having several sessions that are kind of drop-in and more discussion. And so then over Thursday and Friday, you might definitely want to check out those trainings if you have some questions that you want answered right away. So anything else, Deborah?
No, just everyone know that you're not alone. We're here to help out, and we're going to get through this.
Yes, we are. Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. You can click record then.